Shut up and sit down.
By all means, go for it. Have fun. Just leave me alone.
People are coming together more and more and more and more as the government has been failing us more and more.
I'm against being shitty to people.
You can't research your way into understanding somebody.
One way or another, I'd rather have the fight now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fight for Liberty Live. Tonight, we have a kick-ass activist for you. But first, as always, we're going to talk about the people that pay the bills. So, Nugg of Knowledge, they are a wonderful place for you to get all of your cannabis needs, or most of your cannabis needs. We've got Delta-8, CBD, CBG. They even have like some CBD honey on there, which is awesome. I put that in my chamomile tea at night while I'm reading 1984 to help put me to sleep, or some Ayn Rand. That'll really knock you out. So go on over to Nugg of Knowledge and then look up Ayn Rand. Use promo code F4L and you'll get 10% off your first purchase. And that helps out the network, the show, and other awesome liberty activists you know and love like Tom Queter and Dan Berman. So go on over to Nugg of Knowledge. And then when you're done with that, check out kempformaine.com. Harrison Kemp is a really awesome activist and a partner in free speech media, and he is running for governor of Maine. So you can go on over to his website or go to kempformaine.com/fight-for-liberty. And there's a link there for you guys to go make a donation if you want to help him out. He's already got some really cool endorsements like the Maine Cannabis Coalition. He's working with some awesome people from like Ron Paul's campaign and former state house reps from Maine. So go on over, check him out. I'm really excited. I think Maine is going to beat New Hampshire and Wyoming and all the other states and be the first one to go gold. So I'm excited about that. Go on over, check him out. And then, before that, actually, right now, before you watch any more of this show, if you're watching this on YouTube, click the link in the description to go on over to Odysee. Watch this stream over there. You can't see this on Facebook right now because we're still banned from streaming. YouTube's probably going to do the same here pretty soon. So go on over to Odysee, check us out over there. And I'm excited about the show. Tonight, we have the founder of For All Tennessee, former chair of LP Tennessee. He's working with Students for Liberty. He's doing a bunch of awesome stuff. Josh Eakle, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, David.
It's a pleasure. So I usually start off the show with kind of like an intro testimonial question. So I'm curious, who got you plugged into the LP?
That was a while ago. So it's the story, I think, for me started in 2012, as it did with most people that were in our generation with Ron Paul. He didn't actually get me involved in the Libertarian Party. It was just more an introduction to the ideas. In 2012, I was kind of, a volunteer for his campaign and very passionate about the ideas of libertarianism. He introduced me to those concepts. But it really wasn't until 2016 with Gary Johnson and Bill Welch's campaign for president that I saw a viable path to the Libertarian Party being kind of relevant in national politics. And honestly, it was Gary Johnson that motivated me to get involved. In 2016, it was June of 2016, I decided when I think it was their CNN town hall I watched, and I was familiar with the ideas and I was looking out for him. I voted for Gary Johnson in 2012. I showed up at an LP event in Knox County, and it was 5 guys sitting around a table on their phones, all of them. And I walked in and I was sitting, my wife was with me. We sat down, we were talking to them. We're like, so what, who's in charge around here? What is going on? What's this event? What's this all about? And you're like, nobody's in charge. Do you want to run it? So, and I'm sure you've heard that story a million times, right? But
it's all too familiar with the Libertarian Party. So I have to ask, was she already your wife at the time? Did you bring her, or were you guys still dating and you ran the risk of introducing her to libertarians?
We had just recently been married. We got married in 2016, so it was new. But I mean, we've been dating since 2012. So she was very familiar with my political ideas, and we share those. Nice. I'm more of a minarchist, classical liberal, and my wife is more of a what I would describe as kind of an anarchist in a way. So she's actually a little bit more radical than I am.
Based. All right.
Yeah. So, but no, I mean, the rest is history. We started working in the Knox County LP in 2016. We grew that to be the largest county affiliate in the country, which we had 80, 90 people there coming to county meetings. At least Nick told me that at convention in 2018, that it was the largest county affiliate in the country. We got to meet great people like Glenn Jacobs, who we were kind of pivotal, in electing as mayor, even though he was elected as a Republican. And we, I don't know, I'd say built a name for the brand of libertarianism in the state of Tennessee there. And then, I don't know how much. There's a lot of history. So, I mean, at that point it was LP chair, and then For All came after. But a lot of things kind of kicked off by Gary Johnson in 2016.
That's awesome. It's great that that you were able to come into that kind of a situation, which for a lot of people, going to a meeting, 5 guys sitting around a table, all on their phones, not doing anything, no real structure. That's kind of a turnoff for most people. The Libertarian Party has a way of kind of really instantly finding those diamonds in the rough, because they're the only people that are going to stick around after that kind of stuff. And you were actually motivated to go on and continue.
If you stick around and get into leadership in the LP, it's a time suck. It costs money, and it's a lot more work, honestly, than any other paid job that I've had. Just to be honest with you, in the drama and emotional effort that it takes to do. So it's fun.
So all of that considered, what about liberty makes you want to go through that time, money suck and keep on going on with the LP?
So, full disclosure, at least as it pertains to me personally today, I'm not really directly affiliated with the LP. I still am very good friends with many people in the LP. I support, I had the luxury of working for Congressman Amash when he did his exploratory committee last year. And I'm if let's just full disclosure, if he ever ran for president, I would be 1,000,000% back in. But in the short term, I've stepped away from the LP directly, because I think that there's other avenues that I can use to kind of promote liberty. But to kind of address your question in some way, like the idea of liberty, the thing that got me motivated to join the LP to begin with, it really is, it's an existential threat. I'm sure that's, I know that might sound hyperbolic, but honestly, I do believe to be that way. I have a 2-week-old son, and I know I didn't have a son when I got involved, but I see it as the current state of politics is unsustainable, politically, economically, our civil liberties are being under attack, are literally getting sucked from us every single day. The consequences are existential. If we don't stand up now, when we actually can have a voice and we can actually fight, in 10, 20 years, when that is no longer the case, a lot of people are going to look back and say, what the hell? Why didn't you do it? Right. And so for me, it just kind of always has felt like it's something I have to do, whether I want to do it or not. It's like, I see the problem. So I'm going to, like the analogy of Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the hill, whether it results in anything is kind of irrelevant to me. It's like, I need to actually push the boulder. Otherwise I won't be able to sleep at night. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, that's really the core of it.
Yeah, I've had the question posed to me plenty of times in especially libertarian, smoke circles and whatnot, of if the blue pill gets offered to you, would you take it to be able to sleep at night, not doing this kind of stuff? And there's times where I've been asked that question. I'm like, yeah, that'd be nice.
I think it has a lot to do with how much it's weighing on you at any given time, because I don't know if you've had the same experience, David, but for me, I've been involved in political activism. Now I think this is my 10th year as of 2012, and it comes in cycles. So there are periods of time where I'm very motivated and I can keep that motivation up for months and years even. And then there's periods where I just kind of fall off a cliff and I have to step away from it, and I have to just turn that off. The end of 2020, that was a time for me where I was over it, and I had to step away. And that's kind of what created what was the reason For All came into existence, really, with me and my partner, my co-founder, Justin Cornett. So.
Right. Well, that you kind of just answered both parts of my next 2-part question,
Awesome.
Which is, where did the idea for All Tennessee come from, and who was part of the core inception team to get it started?
Yeah. So the guy that that so I should have actually mentioned this earlier. So when I went to that LP meeting, I went with Justin Cornett, who's the co-founder of For All, and my wife. And Justin and I have been friends since 2011, 2012. He and I have been doing political activism since the Ron Paul era, in many different ways. Like we started a blog in 2012 and grew that into something, and then we got involved in the LP, built that. He was kind of my number 2 in the county, and he helped run that region while I focused on Knox County specifically, and he focused on the other counties that were outside of it. So he and I have been doing projects for a while, and we have I like to say we have a bit of synergy. I'm more on the introverted side. I'm more like the data and details guy, and he's a lot more of the salesman, the people person. He's the guy that likes to go out and kind of have the conversations and kiss the babies and schmooze. I'd like to put it that way. So he and I have been involved for a long time in doing political activism. When I was elected as chairman of the LPTN in 2019. I created a legislative committee. And the reason I did this was because for years, we had been doing direct political lobbying, specifically on the topic of ballot access reform in Tennessee. Nice. At the legislature, going back to 2017 when we were in the TNLP. And so I don't know if Justin's background is he actually used to work for the Koch network as a lobbyist, and he did that as a lobbyist and a grassroots organizer, and he did that in Tennessee for years before I was even elected as chair. So when I was elected as chair, I put him in to help me with legislative operations, and he's a full-blown through and through lobbyist as of today. I mean, he's more of one now and more effective one now than he's ever been since I met him. He's getting better every year. Nice. So he and I started it together, and the vision of For All was to get away from political nonsense. If I get too far down the weeds, David, cut me off. I don't want to ramble.
No, you're good. This is exactly what I want.
Okay. So in a nutshell, I'll tell you the biggest problem that we've had with the LP. So the LP has a lot of great ideas, but they have a very bad brand. I'm sure I don't have to tell you this.
Amen.
Like if you go to people and you talk to people about the LP, either they don't know about it or it's a very negative opinion. Typically, at least from my experience. Mm-hmm. So either you're ignorant or you have like a negative chip on your shoulder for the brand. So the problem is the LP has some of the best ideas in the political space, period. Like they are on the right side of the issues, but they have just a really hard time getting through their bad brand recognition, and they have a really hard time communicating those issues and building coalitions because they're an opposition party. I mean, if you're an opposition party, I'm not going to get a Republican and Democrat to say, yeah, I love the LP and what they stand for, because they're always trying to screw me over in some way. It's an opposition party. Right. So what we wanted to do when we started For All was we wanted to get away from politics completely, and we just wanted to focus exclusively on the issues, because when we looked at the issues were, are issues that we find mass support among the populace on. I mean, the issues that we took up in 2021 were issues like civil forfeiture, ballot access reform, fully informed jury legislation. We had legislation to the governor being able to deem businesses essential or non-essential. We had bills that touched on red flag laws and government surveillance. And what we found was when we got away from exclusively focusing on partisan politics, and we said, no politics is going to be here, we're just going to talk about the issues, we found that we were able to get Democratic socialists and Trump supporters sharing and engaging and giving us money. Mm-hmm. And it was shocking to see the Bernie bros and the Trump supporters in the same organization fighting for the same issues. And all it took was a commitment to step away from that completely. But that's only one piece. So For All in a nutshell was focused with like kind of three key things that we wanted to accomplish. So we wanted to focus on issues and not personalities. So we said as a nonprofit, we didn't want to ever endorse candidates or get into any sort of political elections whatsoever. We wanted to stay away from that. We wanted to build an organization like a lobbying group that focused on amplifying the people's voices and not like big moneyed interests like corporate interests or political interests. And we wanted it to be completely crowdsourced, and we wanted it to be bottom up. So that's what we built with For All. It's basically a 501c4 political nonprofit that does direct political lobbying on a legislative agenda that is crowdsourced by our members. So in a way, I call it the democratization of a 501c4. So it's like a lobbying group that's been democratized.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's not anything that I've seen anywhere else. I think it was a very innovative idea, and we hit our fundraising goal of 10K in the first year. We passed 3 bills, which I believe were very radical. One, reform civil forfeiture, the civil forfeiture laws in the state. It wasn't a massive reform. It was something that touched on attorney's fees, so it made it easier to fight civil forfeiture cases. We got a ban on the local county executives' ability to deem businesses essential or non-essential during times of crisis. And then the big one was a complete ban on no-knock raids in the state of Tennessee, and that was our first year. So with that small budget, right? So there wasn't. It was a very scrappy organization, and we still were able to achieve those big wins. So I think the model is a good model. It's just we still have to prove it. We still have to build it out, and we're actually entering the 2022 legislative session right now. Session just kicked off about 8 days ago, and so we'll be releasing our 2022 agenda actually this weekend. So
nice. I will be looking out for that. Yeah, honestly, that bit about like why you stepped away from the LP, like it resonates very loudly with me at the moment. I feel like I'm probably around like in the timeline, like where you probably were like mid 2020, where I just resigned from the state committee and all the campaigns that I'm on. I'm trying to move also, so that has a lot to do with that, because I don't really care about New York all that much. Sure. I don't intend on living there for very long.
I don't judge you for that.
Texas is being kind of nice to me. Ish. It's kind of weird.
Texas, Tennessee, Florida, all better states than New York. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. See, I can't do Florida. I don't like the culture, and B, I don't like the heat. And the humidity and the mosquitoes and the everything. I don't even know if Texas is going to be bearable. So,
well, then sounds like Tennessee's your place. I actually grew up in Tampa, and those cockroaches are as big as your head, and they fly. So yeah, I can concur.
No, thanks.
Not a fun place to live. And mowing the yard was a traumatic experience as a teenager. I'll tell you what. 110 degrees with humidity. It's not fun.
Yeah. No. Yeah, no thanks. I don't want to live where the air hurts my face for either reason. Yeah, like that's my goal.
Tennessee's the perfect mix, man. I love being in Tennessee because I get the kind of mild winters of the South, but you still get seasons. And growing up in Florida, I didn't get seasons at all. It was either summer or summer light. Whereas here you get all 4 seasons, and you get snow like twice a year, so it's very pleasant.
Nice. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time talking to the bootleg libertarian Chris Darnell. And,
I know Chris. Yeah, he got involved in the LP when I was chair. Actually, if I remember, we put him in as a county affiliate. He's a great guy. I love that guy.
Yeah. So he's been trying to get me on the Tennessee bandwagon for like 6 months now. He's been hounding me about moving to Tennessee, and I don't know. We'll see. Basically, my job this year, or my goal this year, is just to like travel, spend like a couple months in a bunch of states doing jobs like this, and then pick one at the end.
Understood. That makes sense. It does make sense to let your job dictate where you live too, rather than just kind of roll the dice and try to figure it out after that. So,
I mean, the one great thing about politics is that there's always work everywhere. Like you can
be seasonal. You know what
this
I mean?
is very true.
and transient,
Very
go away on a dime if somebody loses their election.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I've definitely noticed that. So you mentioned the like existential crisis of like why we have to be a part of this. I'm getting to the point where I feel like that existential crisis has a timeline that no political plan matches. Like that, I don't think that there's a way to elect ourselves into saving this system. I think we need to go some other route at this point. The LP always talks about like a 50-year plan, and it's like, I don't think the U.S. has 50 years left. Maybe, could be wrong, but doubt it.
No, I don't disagree with you on that. But I guess the way that I see it is, when I talk to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of people in the LP about this, and I hear that a lot. But what the solution I hear from many people that are LP adjacent is that we, like it's often an argument that violence may be acceptable at some point as resort against state. I'm not there, and I don't think I'll ever be there, and mainly because I think that as soon as you start using violence against them, you stoop to their level, and it completely defeats the purpose of what we're trying to accomplish, like a peaceful revolution. But I may not be the one carrying the guns, but I know that if the trend continues, then whether I like it or not, or whether I am there or not, there will be unrest. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, there just will be. So
I feel like we're coming down to the is it going to be an us versus the state civil war, or is it going to be a red versus blue civil war?
At least in my opinion, in the short term, it will absolutely be a red versus blue civil war. There's no, just our system is so screwed up. I think people don't really truly understand who the real enemy is. And it's honestly in the best interest of the state to make it a red versus blue civil war. And in a way, they control the propaganda tools, and they have, a lot of tools at their disposal to make that a reality. So
they really do.
Yeah.
It's like Coke versus Pepsi. It will always. Honestly, I honestly think when I found out about Coke and Pepsi being owned by the same company, that was like one of the biggest red pills I ever took. I was like, these people are just lying to us. These people are spending billions of dollars to shit talk their own brand just because they also represent another half. What? What is business like at this point? Like, why are we doing this?
See, I'm not familiar with that. I'd have to look that one up. I wasn't under the impression that they were. But I mean, the analogy still holds true. It's if you're going to say that, I mean, honestly, the Democratic Party, the Republic. I mean, I don't have to tell you this. We're all both of the same kind of political persuasion. They're both just two wings of the same bird, and they obviously have an incentive to fight each other and achieve nothing. It's literally they complement each other and work together all the time. So, yeah. I mean, that's the political system we're in. It's fun stuff, man. But the way that I see it is step away from that. That fight is it's a big fight. In the short term, it is doable. I know that I can walk into a state legislator's office. I can convince them to be on the right side of an issue, and we can chip away at bad laws one step at a time at the local level. And that's kind of, I know that that's within my control, right? So that's or within our control as an organization, and I've seen wins. So I feel like that's a better way to do it rather than sit around in despair at the Coke versus Pepsi nonsense playing out at the national level.
Agreed. I talked to a few different people over the last year that are doing things similar to yourself, and heard about like what you guys are doing, and just seeing the amount of work that's being done in the liberty movement outside of the party, and through legislative work and through volunteerism and through like just other things. I'm like, that gives me hope.
Yeah. All right. If we're gonna change something, it will be at that level first. I mean, we can't. We need to start with things that we can control, with things that we have the resources to fix, and then we can scale from there. That's the way that I see it. And a lot of LP activists are in the same boat that I am. They're in the same boat that you are. We're honestly just regular people that are fed up and frustrated. Typically, we're not the wealthiest people in the world. We have limited resources, and I don't know. One thing I don't fully understand is why we spend so much time getting extremely ambitious about these big national plans when we have a hard time winning a local county election or a local city election. Like if that's not doable, then you're not going to be achieving these big, massive cultural shifts that you dream about. It's just not possible. So let's get the basics down. Let's learn how to walk before we start running.
Could not agree more. We do have a comment from the peanut gallery. Tuned in just in time to see David visibly disappointed that someone doesn't want to violently overthrow the government.
Gotta love it. Yeah. I'm sorry, Dave.
I mean,
you're welcome to do it. I'm just, I'm gonna be my pacifist self and grow my food and mine my Bitcoin and hope I can last as long as possible.
I very much respect that. I'm really like, I'm trying to work towards a nonviolent revolution, but like, there's that piece of me that's starting to get excited.
Understood. I again, my perception is as soon as you go to that point, you really kind of start playing their game. You stoop to their level.
I definitely agree there.
It's kind of what MLK stood for. It's it's the idea that you have to be bigger. You have to be bigger than that. And as soon as you decide that you're not going to be bigger than that, it really undermines the things that you're trying to communicate to people. Because I do still think there's hope. I think that the majority of the public is craving an alternative, like a deeply craving an alternative. And honestly, I mean, this may sound conspiratorial, but I think the feds are looking for any reason to, I don't know if the word malign is the right word. I've had a couple glasses of wine, but to find a way to destroy this movement in any way possible. And so we actually have to hold ourselves to a higher standard than we hold anyone else. And if we don't do that, it'll be easier and easier for them to destroy us. And the reason that's the case is because we are on the right side of the ideas. And we do, if we can actually achieve it and do it correctly and win over the public, we can achieve large scale cultural change, but we have to work twice as hard as they do. Because we have much more enemies, many more enemies,
and much more powerful enemies.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you think about what it would take to go against the intelligence agencies that are absolutely going to go after you. I mean, like, imagine this. Let's just say that it was projected that a third party candidate was going to win the presidency. Do you honestly think that intelligence agencies
would go nuts?
Yeah, they wouldn't take that. It would, even before it could get to that point, which is what's going on now, there would be a massive propaganda campaign. There would be an attempt to plant people within your movement that try to make you look bad and try to reduce the impact of your message and try to put out hit pieces. I mean, it wouldn't even just start at the time when the presidential election was about to be completed. From A to Z, you would be getting under assault. And I think we are under assault, whether we realize
have feds in the party for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean,
undoubtedly.
I think that there are absolutely concerted efforts to try to undermine the party. I don't want to point to any people or say this guy is or this guy isn't, but I'd say that if you think that they're not going to try to do that, especially as we get relevant, then we might be a little bit ignorant. I mean, that's just an inevitability. It really is. So we got to be better. That's the way I see it. We've got to be better, And if we're better and we just still hold to our principles and we stand on truth, those values will speak for themselves. So
yeah,
we'll see how it shakes out. That might be idealistic, but
no, I mean, I appreciate that perspective. So what were some of the most challenging pieces of getting For All Tennessee off the ground and kind of breaking into that lobbying world?
Okay, so full disclosure, you need to have Cornette on the show because he's the guy that does the nitty gritty of the lobbying. So I'm the guy that does a lot of the volunteer and grassroots organization and the communication and the marketing stuff. He does a lot of that nitty gritty grassroots activism. But I will tell you an anecdote or a story about what happened to us last year that I think really puts the political nonsense that you deal with in perspective. So in Tennessee, if you are a third party candidate and you want to run for office, if you want to let me put it this way, if you want to be a Republican or Democrat and you want to run for office in Tennessee, you have to get 25 signatures. If you want to run as a third party candidate in Tennessee, you have to get 56,082 signatures. So the state of the law here is actually one of the highest thresholds in the country. And I think it is per capita the highest threshold in the country. The only two states that have higher signature requirements than us are California and Texas, and they have 4 times our population. Like that. So we've been trying to change this law for years, and we have wide support in the House on a reform bill that we drafted in 2019. What this bill does is this bill takes that 56,000 signature threshold and it brings it closer in line with the rest of the country. So it takes that total and brings it closer to 12,000. The reason I say is because it's not actually a total. It's a percentage of the votes cast in the last gubernatorial race. So we take that 2.5% requirement and we make it 0.5%. So it takes that 56,000 down to 12,000, something like that. So we got this bill written, right? We got this bill introduced when I was chair of the LP in 2020. We had great support. We had, I want to say, like a quarter of the House that were willing to pass it. A little bit more in the Senate in 2020. It didn't work out in 2020, but in 2021 we started For All. We included that in our legislative agenda for the first year, and we had it introduced. You know how the committee process works, I'm sure, with legislation. Your bill has to go through several committees before it makes it to the House floor. So one of the key committees that it had to go through in the Tennessee legislature, because we're a supermajority state, it's run by a Republican. We worked so hard on that 8-person committee to have 5 yes votes, enough to pass it. The day of the vote, we had confirmation from every single person in that committee that we were going to pass that they were going to vote for that bill. The bill was introduced. It was called up for a vote. One of our yes votes stepped out of the room, leaving us with a 4-3 majority. So we still had the majority we needed to get through the passage. The vote was called, and 4 voted yes, 3 voted no. And the Republican chairman said, the nays have it, and killed the bill. So, like, what do you do in that situation, David? You've literally passed the bill. Like, you've literally gotten the votes, right? And the bill was still killed. So that's the dynamic when you're trying to do anything that I would deem as radical or significant. You fight nonsense like that, right? So I mean, they literally say, "Oh, I misheard the voice vote," which they obviously didn't. We went back and got on the record statements from every single person that voted yes. We provided that to the chairman and asked him to reconsider it. No one was going to reconsider it. So we're going to bring it back this year. That is a bit of a spoiler, but our members did authorize us to work on this bill again this year, so it will be reintroduced. But yeah, so I mean, that kind of shows you that those are some of the challenges that we deal with when doing the legislative lobbying. I personally am a very passionate and not really the type of person to like hold off on my opinion. So I was actually told by Justin that he needed me to be at the legislature less because I was pissing off some of the people there. So when it comes when it comes to the day-to-day challenges, Coronet is a good guy to ask, and I can obviously get him on your show whenever you're ready to talk.
Would love to, yeah.
But he definitely has to deal with some craziness, some of just the nonsense like that. I mean, the good news is I think we generated hundreds of emails and phone calls to that gentleman's office after the fact, and he knew that he screwed up. He knew that people were aware that he screwed up. We had 100,000 hits on that on the content that went out about it, and so there was some attention.
Nice.
We'll see if it happens again this year, though. It's going to go through that same committee with those same people, and they're all going to vote yes again. So we'll see how it shakes out.
He can't try to do the same thing twice, right? I mean, he can he?
I've been shocked many times. It really is shocking, especially when you're in a state like Tennessee where we have a Republican supermajority. It's a good old boy system. If they decide they don't want something to work out, they'll do anything to make it the case. They write the rules, man.
Very true. So I feel like one of the main issues that the LP has, or just the movement can have, is that as you start to research liberty in general, you start to realize how many things are fucked up and how many things we need to fix, and it becomes a little crazy, and we end up like buckshotting basically everything that we do. And all of our candidates have like 87 platform planks, and no one can tell you their top 3 issues. And then you went and created a organization called For All Tennessee, so it gives you the ability to definitely do that. How did you pick like the kind of things that you actually wanted to focus on specifically?
Okay, so the mission statement of the organization is we focus on legislation that empowers people and limits government. So in a nutshell, if it doesn't fit into those boxes, if it's not something that empowers individuals and reduces government power, we're not going to work it. That's the foundation. The first year, it was driven by a lot of polling of the people that we knew were our donors, like our initial donors and people that were in our movement. This year, it was a very clear process. So our legislative team put together about 50 potential reforms that we felt like fit within that window, or that fit within that mission: empower people, limit government. These were issues that we had aggregated from our network for the last year. So these are things that people came to us and said, I would like to see you work on certificate of need laws, or I'd like to see you work on citation in lieu of arrest or bond reform. I mean, they all came, organically, people came to us and said they want to support these issues. So we did some research, put these all together, identified what legislative reform would look like for each one of them. And then we basically, did a quality check with the board and said, hey, which ones do you think are doable? Which ones do you want to veto? So the board kind of said, all right, out of these 50, we narrowed it down to like 40. We took that and then we went to our advisors, and our advisors are a mix. So it's about half. I want to say it's like 60% independents, with about like 20% Republicans and 20% Democrats. So there's a political, like even political split in the advisory board. So we put it through that system to make sure that we didn't offend any specific political group, and it was something that actually had mass appeal. Mm-hmm. They killed one issue, just one out of the 40. And then we gave it to our members and said, which ones are you going to authorize us to work? And they killed 2 and ended up with like 37 issues total that we were able to work. We took that list. We went to our partners in the legislature, the members that we knew we could introduce legislation, our partners like IJ, who helps us write a lot of legislation, and other partners. We decided what was viable and what wasn't. We narrowed it down to, I want to say it was about 15 issues at the end. And that's what we're going to introduce this weekend, is the summary of those kind of like 15 core issues that we think we can see change on this year. So it went through an arduous process to like, to really check 2 things, like, do our members support it? Is it true to our mission? Or 3 things. Do our members support it? Is it true to our mission? And is it nonpartisan? Is it something that is mass appeal? And anything that checked all those boxes made it to the final cut. So
what were some of the things you were considering when working with, like, in that last stage, when taking it from like the 39 down to 15? What was some of the things going through your head about what makes it viable or not?
Well, there was an element of like, can we get someone to sponsor or put their name on a bill? So like, what does it matter if I want to say introduce a bill to abolish the state government? No one's gonna introduce it, right? I can't get somebody to put their name on it to actually get that bill on the floor. So that was a big one. Can we get people to put their name on it, get a bill introduced on the floor? So that was the first thing. And then there was also a viability and a resource question. So like, of the issues that we can get introduced, which ones actually could make it through committee theoretically? And then which ones do we have the means to work? Like, there's a value in bucketing issues that are in similar committees. And the reason that's the case is because in a committee, there's 8 people. So we can have conversations with those 8 people over and over again about these core issues, and make sure that they are very aware of our values and maybe get those issues through. Whereas if we say choose 20 issues in 20 different committees, multiply that by 6, what is that? 120 issues in 6 committees. Yeah, 120 people, something like that. So then we have to have those conversations with all those people, and we have a small team. Like, I have 1 key lobbyist, that's Justin Cornett, and we have something like 5 to 8 volunteer lobbyists that kind of come in and help us year over year. That number very fluctuates, and it's volunteers, so it's not like we can assume they're going to be there all the time.
Right.
So those are kind of the things we thought about, and I'm sure Justin could give you even more considerations on that, because he was there day to day, talking to these lawmakers, having these conversations, and really identifying what's feasible and what wasn't through those conversations.
Nice.
So, and I can give you a snapshot of what that ended up being. I can't give you the exact bills because they're not all final yet, but I can at least tell you kind of the high level.
Ooh, do we get spoilers?
You can get some headers. Yeah. It's going to be a lot of CJR stuff. We're going to do civil forfeiture again. So that's not a surprise to most people. We are going to touch on the broken bond system in Tennessee. We are going to touch on qualified immunity. We are going to do something we didn't do last year, and we're going to try to pass a bill on medical cannabis and cannabis decrim. We're going to do ballot access again. And then we're going to touch a little bit on eminent domain reform and some work on restricting states' use of facial recognition. But that's a small piece. There's still some more stuff. Yeah. So fun stuff. I mean, we'll see how it shakes out.
I'm excited. If you're able to legalize cannabis in Tennessee, I might actually move there.
Right. But now there is a bill that was introduced that would do full legalization. I would love to say that it's possible that bill's going to get passed, but I do not see that as viable in the short term. I do think they might do a decrim bill, though. I mean, that's completely possible. Like, completely possible.
I mean, honestly, as a good little anarchist, that's all you really need, right?
That's actually Justin's argument. It's like decrim is actually better than full-on legalization because there's really no infrastructure there for the state to get in, give their paws to regulate it.
Mm-hmm.
It just kind of says they're going to stay hands off. I personally think that there are people that are making they're building families and making a living off of this really legitimate industry.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like for them to be able to operate legally because it's a lot of tax revenue the state could have. It's industries that could move here and bring jobs to the state and and build families. But we've got a lot of farmland, man. Like a lot of farmland here.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a completely, if we're going to do it, it's a great state to do it in. But,
yeah, unfortunately, decrim bills usually only touch on like possession and use, not sale.
Right. Sale is typically still criminalized in those cases.
Mm-hmm.
So, you might get a slap on the wrist or a little fine, or they might just let you off if you're trying to, exchange less than an ounce. But if you're trying to sell it, typically decrim bills don't touch that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. New York did some weird things with their legalization, and it's still not fully legal. But New York City had it decriminalized for a while, but it was basically just like the cops aren't going to mess with you unless they want to.
So I'll give you an example of how it's similar in Tennessee. So Tennessee, a super majority Republican state, every single lawmaker out here talks about how much they love small government, small government, small government, small government.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Nashville, a couple years ago, passed a decriminalization ordinance. Said, hey, we're going to decriminalize in the city of Nashville.
Nice.
The state legislature came in and said, no, you ain't. And they overrode that law.
Wow.
So, small government, right? You got to love the state stepping in and telling cities and counties how they're going to operate. But that's the way it is in Tennessee. And that sounds similar to kind of stuff you see in northern states all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, like, the way that New York operated was that like NYPD couldn't really give you a ticket. Basically what they do in New York, because it's so bureaucratic, is they end up making they basically like drop the quota, like the amount that a thing is towards the police's quota. So like on the internal stuff that they're not allowed to actually tell you exists or they're doing. And externally, it makes it look like basically they just make the cost benefit analysis shift to where the paperwork and the time is not worth the pats on the back that you're going to get for making that arrest. So NYPD isn't going to touch you, but we still have 4 federal agencies and the state troopers that operate within the city of New York. So if they catch you, they're very likely, if there's someone in the area and they feel like it, to just like pass you off to a state trooper who's usually got a patrol car somewhere within a couple blocks also, and can and now you're even in significantly more trouble.
Gotta love it. Gotta love it, man. That's some ridiculous nonsense.
And then we went from that to being able to smoke in public anywhere that you're allowed to legally smoke cigarettes. That's where we're at right now.
When did that law change?
Late last year. Or I guess it was probably like September or so of 2021. I think that went through. We still don't have stores. We won't have stores until like mid 23 is what they're saying, because it's going to take them that long to figure out how to tax us and regulate it into oblivion. But in the meantime, possession and consumption is legalized, and public consumption is included. So anywhere that it's legal to smoke a cigarette, which is only like maybe 40% of the state, right?
It was in 1970, right? Like, you can't do it anywhere anymore.
Yeah, because you can't do it within a very large amount of space from a school, like within 15 feet of any doorway or opening to any public building, nowhere inside, pretty much anywhere. Like in New York City, you can't even smoke a cigarette in your own apartment. That's illegal.
Gotta love New York, man. Gotta love it.
Ridiculous.
Hopefully by the time that 2023 rule kicks in, you'll be out of there, right? And be able to be in one of those more free states in the South.
Yes.
I mean, it's funny though. See, people say there are more free states in the South, or they are, they're more economically free. But when it comes to those social issues, it's really backwards down here still. I mean, it's shocking to me that you could drive 2 hours away and buy a substance, a plant, completely legally, and then come back here and you could literally be put in jail, had your kids taken from you, just for consuming a plant that grows out of the ground. It's complete nonsense. It's like 15 years behind reality. But I do think it's highly likely that the federal government will act on this before the Tennessee government, the legislature will. Sadly, I hope I'm proven wrong this year, but we'll see how it shakes out. I mean, I do think decrim's viable, but legalization, that's probably going to have to come from the feds before the super majority down here is ready to do anything. So,
and I mean, I feel like it's likely that the feds don't go all the way to where we'll still have to do it in the rest of the states as well. If they just like kind of decriminalize it,
like remove it from schedule, like deschedule it and then let the states do their own thing. That would be an ideal situation. That could be done with the stroke of a pen. If Biden wanted to do it, he could have done it on Inauguration Day. He didn't do it at all.
So could Trump?
Oh, absolutely. Trump could have.
I know a lot of people that after Trump lost were really hopeful that he would just like go nuts and like do a bunch of crazy shit. And I had some friends, and some of whom had actual like connections to Trump and were like trying to get meetings with him to try to get him to deschedule cannabis. Cause we're like, bro, just, you've got like a month, just like you want to really fuck over Biden and Clinton, pardon Snowden and Assange.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was Ross Ulbricht.
Right.
Just like go nuts.
No, instead of doing that, he pardoned the people that broke the law to help his campaign. So I mean, I don't know, man. This also is in the realm of conspiracies. But since we're here and I'm drinking some wine, we're having a nice chat. Say that I think that Trump was controlled opposition from the beginning. Like 100%. I think that Hillary Clinton asked him to run in 2015, 2016 because she thought that he was going to make it easier for her to get the nomination. And so when that didn't shake out, change of pace. I don't think it by any means was he an anti-establishment candidate. I think he was playing the ball the entire time. He just had a different style and it worked for him. So, but no, I think he was controlled opposition from the beginning. That he didn't have an anti-establishment bone in his body, and it was clear by every action he took. So
I very much agree. I guess the little bit of hope that I had in that time frame was like, if he, depending on how much on the in or like in the know he was, they could have been like lying to him and pretending like he was gonna win, and then just kind of like took it from him, and he wasn't really expecting that. And his reaction, I couldn't tell if it was semi-genuine or if it was still playing into that. And I guess I had like a little shred of hope that he would like want to get vengeance on the people that propped him up and then tore him down. But we saw that not happen. So,
well, I think it was a debate. I think that there was a conversation between Mitch McConnell and the Republican establishment and Trump after all that, BS election fraud stuff. They were like, "Hey, listen, either you're going to play ball with this, you're going to proceed with not, having any disagreement or any problem with this, or we're going to go ahead and impeach you, and you'll never have any possibility of ever being elected ever again." And he made the decision to do that. I don't know. I mean, controlled opposition. He's still a person, right? He's still that Trump. He's still Trump, who we know, like who the public have known for like 40 years. Like, the guy is an egomaniac, and yeah, he really will take any opportunity to boost his own ego, boost his own brand, and enrich himself. So I mean, whether or not he was hanging out with the Clintons before he ran still doesn't change the fact that he's Trump, you know, and he may have had a hard time with the not too good to lose. I don't know. This is all conjecture, right? I mean, who the hell knows?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at this point, like I just debated a flat earther on Fight Club last week, so this is just dipping our toe into the conspiracy waters as far as Fight for Liberty and free speech media has been going lately.
Yeah, I just find it funny. I came here to say we're going to talk about issues, and we're back into the Trump talk, but it's fun. it's just an inevitability. You gotta love it, man.
Amen. But back into the issues. You've talked a lot about criminal justice reform and that kind of being a main focus of For All Tennessee, and even some of the stuff you're doing before that.
Yeah.
How are you working on promoting criminal justice reform in a blood red state and kind of crossing those bridges?
So, the issues that we focused on very strongly have been around civil forfeiture and jury nullification, like conscientious acquittal. The way that we and obviously no-knock raids, which was a big one. Honestly, we have an interesting environment. I think many Republicans in this state understand that our criminal justice system is broken. We just kind of have different opinions on how we fix it. Our governor has talked a lot about reforming our broken criminal justice system. We have a prison overcrowding problem in the state of Tennessee that's bankrupting counties across the state. When I was chair of the LPTN, we had elected officials. One of our libertarian elected officials is the mayor of Trousdale County, and I've had many conversations with him on the cost of just prison overcrowding and kind of what the financial impact is to counties and how that can really cause problems for not only executives but just people there. So I don't know. Here's the way that we see it. It's a mass. We only focus on mass appeal issues, and civil forfeiture is one of those things that when you hear about what it is, it is so obviously wrong. So I know that you're probably aware of what it is, but for the sake of your audience, civil forfeiture is the idea that if law enforcement believe that you use property in the commission of a crime, whether that's like a vehicle or cash or your something of that nature, then they can seize it and then require you to petition them to get it back. So there's a story out of Sevier County in Gatlinburg of a woman about 10 years ago who got her inheritance from her late mother. She was driving to the bank to deposit it, like $10,000, maybe a little bit more than that. She was driving to the bank, and she had a bag of antacid pills that she apparently crushed up for some use. She got pulled over in Sevier County. Law enforcement saw the cash, saw the crushed up antacid pills, claimed that they were a narcotic, seized her inheritance, and then she had to go through a multi-year process to kind of claim, request that money back. It was proven that she wasn't under the influence of any substance. It was proven that that was antacid and not heroin or whatever the hell they thought it was. Mm-hmm. And even after those things were proven, Tennessee law enforcement still kept her money in the bank, kept it. So I think eventually she did get it back after over a year fighting and the mass amount of legal fees. But I think anyone that hears that story, I says there's something wrong. Like that's not the way the law should work. We are built on the principle of innocent until proven guilty, and it's an extreme violation of that. So, those are the types of issues we take on because those issues, those are black and white. I mean, those are very clear. I mean, you talk to anybody and it's not ambiguous. We're not talking about, I want to defund the police or have some sort of radical model. No, I just literally want due process of law, and I want people to be able to have access to their, have access to life, liberty, and property. And we need a restrained government that needs to operate with due process. That's very simple. So that's kind of the approach that we take. And those issues aren't hard to bring people along with you on. I mean, talk about that story, it's very easy for a leftist or Trump supporter or a standard conservative or a libertarian to come and say, yeah, we need to work together to fix that problem. And that's what we've seen. And the same thing with qualified immunity more and more nowadays. I mean, that you'd think would be more of a hot button issue with the right, but it's not really as controversial as you might think. I mean, the idea that that law enforcement have some extra protection so that they don't have to be liable for mistakes that they made, whereas everyone else has to. It's not a controversial opinion. So those are the kind of issues we take on. And that's kind of our approach at how we kind of bring people together to focus on reform.
I like it. I have been pleasantly surprised by how, I'm working on a Republican campaign right now. So everyone I'm talking to is a registered Republican. I've had some interesting conversations about policing and specifically about qualified immunity. And yeah, it's Republicans, the people, not the elected officials or county leaders or anything like that, but just like normal Republicans, I feel like understand, like they respect the police, but they don't trust them.
Right.
Like they have that little bit in the back of their head that like they still work for the government and the government is still dumb. So
they're the ones that show up to confiscate your guns.
Right.
Yeah.
So, we have to respect them and we have to pay them better and train them better. And we can fly flags that are a mockery of the American flag and break every U.S. flag code imaginable with a little blue line down it. But like, they shouldn't be not liable for the fuckery. Like if they do fuckery, they should be liable for the fuckery. And it's a pretty simple, pretty widely accepted, I think, stance at this point.
Absolutely. And then another issue that you think might not be, this is something we've seen mass appeal on as well is jury nullification. Are you familiar with the idea of how that works? Have you ever heard of it?
I am, but for the viewers again, please go for it.
The idea that, juries were intended when they were created to not only, make a decision on the law or, enforce the law, but they were there to determine the law and the facts of the case. So what that basically means is, according to the original inception of the way juries were supposed to operate was juries were, they weren't there to just blindly enforce the law with an axe. They were there to consider the intention, and they were there as kind of the last vestige to protect the citizens from immoral laws, right? The last line of defense. Over time, that's been completely bastardized. Like nowadays, if you tell somebody that you understand nullification, basically nullification in a nutshell is the idea that somebody is guilty, but I'm going to choose to acquit them. So they're not innocent, but they're not guilty, right? So they're nullified. The law is nullified and they're acquitted. So an example would be like, grandmother, 80-year-old grandma smoking cannabis because she's doing, chemotherapy and she needs to be able to eat, right? Putting her in prison for that would obviously be like a moral tragedy when she's literally just trying to use medication to eat and stay alive and sustain herself. And so juries should have the ability to kind of look at that situation, look at all the factors and say, yeah, she's guilty, but should we enforce the law? It's like, is it moral? Is it right? And so in Tennessee, in many states, if you even acknowledge that when you go into being a jury and they start to interview you, if you even acknowledge that you understand what nullification is and how it works, you'll be thrown from the jury. You'll be completely removed from the process. Before, during, and I don't know if they could do it after. That's up to somebody else who's smarter than me to answer that question. But before and during the case, So basically, what jury nullification, we have a bill which was introduced by one of my favorite people in the House, who's no longer serving anymore. His name, Representative Martin Daniel from East Tennessee, that basically said that if requested by a defense attorney, the judge could inform juries in the state of Tennessee of their right to nullify. So if the defense attorney said, "Hey, judge, I would like to make this inform the jury about this," the judge could go in and say, "Yeah, we're going to inform the jury. In this case, you need to be aware that you can nullify the law." And so you can imagine the impact that would have with a variety of immoral laws or laws that just are applied incorrectly. Again, that one's been tougher to get through the legislature, but it is one of those things that when you talk to conservatives, when you talk to liberals, libertarians, it's one of those things people are like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, there's a reason we have the jury, and they're not there to blindly enforce the law. They're there to protect us from bad laws, really, and be that last line of defense. And so this really, jury nullification is just reinforcing their ability to do that. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of like Spooner, and I'm definitely an anarchist, and I think the Constitution's kind of a joke. But if we still operated like the way that the country was originally designed to operate, it would be a fuck ton better. Like they did a lot of really interesting things, like juries with the concept of jury nullification. Like they didn't need to have that. Like in 1780, like they could have just skipped right over that, not thought about it, and like we wouldn't have that.
So it's worth mentioning. This is one of the reasons why nullification is still around today. That it wasn't even. I mean, I think that the founders were aware of it, but there isn't a provision that you could find in law or in the Constitution that says you have the right to nullify. It was actually a consequence of like natural law. It was a consequence of the way that. What's the word I'm looking for? Like English common law. So it's actually just like the way I put this is that it doesn't have to be enshrined anywhere. And I'm not a legal scholar, so I have to bring somebody on that would be able to tell you a little bit more about this. But it's set up in a way that you can't fight it. That's one of the reasons why they just really want to screen you to find people that are ignorant on the topic, because no matter really what they do, they can't make it illegal. It's a consequence of the way that the English common law was set up and kind of the foundations of the Constitution. Set it up to be possible. I could find a great resource for you on it and send it to you. But yeah, I'm probably
please do, because I'm very curious. It's interesting. So like I've heard about jury nullification, obviously, like from a few different people and like within the liberty movement and stuff. But the first time that I ever heard of it was actually watching. I believe it was the show Scandal.
Okay.
It was either Scandal or How to Get Away with Murder, one of the two. My ex made me watch them both, and we basically at the same time. But I'm pretty sure it was Scandal.
Yep.
There's a case where, even though, like you're saying, in a lot of cases, you're like it's very controlled and you're not allowed to inform people and this and that. One of the people that works for the law firm that the show is based around, like left pretty much like a printout of an article about jury nullification like on the bench outside, so where the jurors were gonna like sit during recess for a second to like inform secretly about this, and they get caught and they actually get in trouble for leaving that there. And I remember watching, like, this was probably 2017, so like I was a libertarian, but I was still just barely maybe 2 ticks down from the center line, like we're just starting, and I was just like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. How are you getting in trouble from the good guys? Like her boss is yelling at her for doing this, and I'm like, you're the good guy of the show, and you're actually like trying to enforce that the rules that say you can't, like, what?
That's actually something that has happened in real life too. I mean, there are people that have gone to courthouse steps and hand out flyers to jurors, kind of talking about like, here are your rights as a juror. There have been many legal fights on this because those people have been arrested and prosecuted for like jury tampering, right? When it's really a First Amendment issue. Like they should be free to educate juries on their rights. There's nothing wrong with that, but there are restrictions on what you can hand out, literature you can hand out on court steps around the radius of the building. And I mean, it's been a fight in many states and many different times. But yeah, I mean, you think that'd be common sense, right? But it's not.
Yeah. That would be a fun like organization. Somebody watching can start this organization where you go and you like analyze somehow, like maybe AI or something, just like analyze all the court cases going on and all the ones that should be nullified, and then set up activists to go actually just voluntarily get arrested for informing the jury of their right to nullify.
Well, the issue is that at that point,
we need Adam Kokesh.
right?
Just-
I love Adam, man. The reason that would probably be difficult to work is that as soon as the court found out that the jury was aware, they would be thrown out the jury. So you'd have to do it secretly somehow. But I love where your head's at, man. We got to make it happen. I love it.
All right, somebody watching, figure out what I'm missing here and make it a thing.
Do it.
Oh man. So what would you say to people watching who are, kind of where you were in 2020, thinking about stepping out of electoralism and working either more lobbying, direct action, or activism or something like that? How would you advise them to kind of figure out that path, like which way you want to actually go with it?
That's kind of a hard question. I would recommend that you do it. I guess here's I would boil it down to this: like, if you think you can make a difference and you see a path to make a difference, chase that. I know a lot of people, and I've had a lot of conversations, David, with people in the LP that have said, I have spent years doing this. I've spent thousands of dollars and I haven't seen any impact and change. What am I doing here? I mean, you have to put it like it's not only a conversation about impact for the sake of impact, but it's also a conversation about, can you sustain your own effort? So if you're a libertarian activist, if you burn yourself out, you're worthless to your family, to the cause, to the movement. You can't do that. People have to have some degree of wins. They have to have some degree of impact. If they're going to feel like they're fighting a futile effort forever, that's just not going to last. So, I'd say find something that you can change and can impact, even if it's very small, and chase that first. Show, prove to yourself that you can actually move the needle in some way. And then when you can kind of get your arms around those smaller things, then scale. Don't go completely for the big picture, the biggest challenge first. Don't go for the governor's race or the presidential race or, whatever that may be. Start with something that you can change. Get your hands dirty, learn something, get out of your comfort zone, and get out of your bubble. Try to meet people that don't think the way that you think. And keep doing that, and eventually you'll find that will bring you to bigger things, whether you like it or not. And so, I don't know. That's kind of the way that I see it. Is if you're uncomfortable, it's a good thing. And if you're out of the bubble, it's even better. And if you're making real change and you're actually impacting things, that's really the goal. A lot of people in the LP, they kind of lose sight of that. They chase like Twitter likes or Facebook likes, and they have no impact on anything. I mean, and I'm not using that as an insult. Like, it's just a lot of people in the echo chamber love what they're saying, but it has no impact on culture. It has no impact on law. It has no impact on real things that actually change the future of society. And so we got to like recenter yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes stepping away from the echo chamber and from the movement can help with that. So I don't know.
I agree. I think I will say that I think the existence of the echo chamber is kind of nice sometimes. Like I can liken it a lot to like a youth retreat for like a church youth group, of just like stepping back into that, like everyone agrees with you, everybody's kind of excited about things, and like everyone's doing the thing, and to get kind of charged back up, because if you deal too much with like normies and duopoly people, you can start to get like sucked back into that world.
It's good to have your people, man. It's like, I'm not a religious person, but I was a pastor's kid growing up. It's like church. You go to church on Sunday and you get hyped up, and you got your friends and your everybody that agrees with you, and you guys are all talking about the same values, and it gives you the energy to go spend that week not doing that. maybe a bad example if you're more agnostic like I am, but I mean, it's the same concept. It's like,
But everyone still gets that. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm also agnostic, but
Yeah.
everyone understands that concept. And the thing is, everyone understands that the bad Christians are the ones that are only really Christians at church.
sure.
Right.
And you got to
and
go take those values outside of church for sure.
Right. And I think we do a lot of the same thing. We go, or not we, you and I necessarily, but a lot of people get caught up in that, I'm a libertarian twice a month for my state and my county meetings. And then, the rest of the time I'm a this, or I'm a salesman.
They're not living their values. They're not voting their values. They're not really doing anything about it except for liking some posts on Facebook. I mean, you really, if you believe it's existential, which it is, you have to live that way, man. I mean, you have to think about that every day. What can you do to push the needle? What can you do to kind of like make things better? And you have to take your life, your energy and kind of put it towards that in your day to day. I mean, it's not fun. I mean, sometimes you got to take breaks, but no, I do like the analogy of church, because that's the way I always feel about it. When you go to an LP conference or an LP convention, it's like, oh yeah, we're all there, we're getting hyped up, and that's what gives us the energy to kind of go into the next year, or go into the next couple months. Fun stuff.
I'm trying to get to as many conventions as I can this year. I did 4 last year plus YALCon. I'm trying to beat that number this year.
You should come to LibertyCon this year. We're going to have it at the end of October, and some big names. So it's back after COVID. It'll be fun. Students for Liberty.
I will do my best. I was supposed to go to the one last year, and lots of things went wrong like that week. Like literally like the couple days before that, like my life just, so I didn't make it out there, but hopefully this coming year for sure.
Next go around. So yeah, it'll be good. It'll be good stuff. I've been to too many LP conventions. I've got a 14-day-old baby downstairs. And so this year, maybe the first year in a while that I'm not going to make a national LP convention. But we'll see how it goes for next go round.
Come on. The National Convention of Libertarians is a perfect place for a 4-month-old baby. It's just exactly where they should be.
See, I can't tell if you're being sarcastic, but
you got to start them young. Train them up in the way they will go. Like,
I just don't know if I, want them around those libertarians. They're scary people sometimes, man.
That's fair. That is fair. But they're good.
They're great people too. They're very good-hearted, but
yeah,
they're intense. I tell you what.
That is fair. So before we wrap up, tell people how they can find you and For All Tennessee, and also get involved if they're anywhere as close to Tennessee. Or I don't know if you need remote volunteers too.
No, absolutely. So if you're across the country, we obviously need financial support. And if you want to sign up to volunteer, we'll let you know if there's opportunities, remote or otherwise. But you could go to foralltn.org. That's our website. You could follow us at foralltn on Twitter. Just look up For All Tennessee on Facebook. On foralltn.org, you'll see at the very bottom of the page, if you scroll down, that there is a opt-in where you can get email updates, get action item updates on how to volunteer. And then there's obviously a donate tab. So we need all the financial support we can get going into this next legislative session. So if you can help donate $5, $10 a month, I mean, $5 a month will get you membership. So you actually don't have to be a Tennessee resident to vote on the agenda for next year. But $60 a year, $5 a month will make you an official member. Otherwise, just give us a follow, engage with our stuff on social, keep an eye out for those calls to actions, because really the big things that are going to matter is when we have another situation like that ballot access bill that maybe goes through committee and has a pivot point. Mm-hmm. Making a phone call or sending an email, even if you're not in Tennessee, can go a long way. So, we'd love to have you on the list.
To shout out Adam Kokesh for a second time in the last 15 minutes. Like, we saw what calls and emails and reaching out to people did for him this year already. Charges dropped and legal precedents to drive an unregistered vehicle without a license in that county going forward.
Nice.
Not only did he get away, I feel like a lot of libertarians would consider just paying a fine and going, or maybe getting off without a fine as like a big W. Like, no, he got like written permission to drive there without a license.
Gotta love Adam, man. He's like at the nexus of all these big fights, and he somehow makes it on top.
It's
in
beautiful.
some way, he's still going, dude. I remember, not to derail us too much because I know we're closing, but I remember one of my earliest memories in the Liberty movement was him doing his March on Washington and getting arrested in 2012 because he had a shotgun in DC. And he's still doing shit, man. I tell you what, it's so funny to me. So
I have to I have an extra appreciation for Adam because when I joined the party and the movement, I hated him. Like I was all of the terrible things that Mises says about the Prags. Like in 2016 when I joined the LP because I agreed with them on guns, drugs, somewhat on war-ish, and like the basic constitutional conservative stuff, right? I was a very baby libertarian, and so for quite some time I was still like, these anarchists are retarded. and like somebody who wants to take the party that could do something cool like Gary Johnson, something awesome and libertarian like Johnson Weld, and we're gonna go do this dumb bullshit of like, we're gonna dissolve the federal government on day one. And I hated it with a burning passion. And now I am who I am now, and I have to just like eat my words, because some of this has been said like on the earliest episodes of the show. Like I started the show when I still didn't like Kokesh, so yeah, I have to eat my words on that one. And
yeah, it's interesting how you could start there and end up, like after multiple years, kind of like understanding the philosophy at that point that you go to that extreme. I honestly, dude, I have an appreciation of anyone that is going to help me push that boulder. So, anarchist or minarchist or whatever, if you are like pushing against the state and you're wanting to do it, I'm loving it. So that's the way that I see it. And no exception for Adam. Adam's a little bit what's the word I'm looking for? Non-traditional in his approach, very radical. And so, but he's a personal friend of mine. I've met him many times. He's been at LP conventions, and I have some respect for him for sure. So
always a good time. Josh, thanks so much for coming on. This was great. Definitely we'll have to get Justin on to talk the other half of it. But I am really excited by what you guys are doing in Tennessee, and just I think you guys are setting a really important precedent that like just a chunk of money and a handful of people that actually want to do something can radically do something in their, like, you guys are doing statewide stuff. Like this isn't even like township bullshit. Like you guys are making a difference statewide. That's awesome.
Build bridges, man. That's the goal. So yeah, keep an eye out this year. And for your audience, we love your support. I appreciate you giving us a platform, and hope to see you again soon, my friend. Yeah, for sure. I will. I'll try to make it to Tennessee. I think I'm actually going to be at your state convention if you're going to be there. Yeah, I may be there. I do think the only thing that's going to keep me from being there this year is going to be travel, because my new job has me traveling, and I think there might be a conflict, but I am planning to be there with my wife and my little baby. So hopefully we can hang out and talk, man. Sounds like a plan. Right. All right, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you don't already, because shit's been scrolling across the bottom this entire time, so you should already have followed Josh and For All Tennessee. But if you haven't yet, do that. Like this video and share it with everybody. And then go to foralltn.org and make a donation, because they're doing awesome work. And we love it when people do awesome work. And then come back here next Tuesday. We have Jonathan. Too many J names in the Liberty movement, bro. Jonathan Howe, who's running against AOC on Tuesday, so that's going to be really exciting. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Catch you back here next time. Until then, keep up the fight.
Shut up and sit down.